I entered veterinary school because, unsurprisingly, I wanted to become a healer rather than a killer of animals. I realised that harmful animal use might be required in some parts of the veterinary course, and also I thought that humane alternatives were probably available, but I was unaware of what the details of either of those would be. And thus unprepared, I entered first year. And in first year, in the introductory biology classes, we dissected animals such as rats, snails, slugs, body parts from abattoirs. I tried not to think too much about where all these bodies were coming from, and this worked pretty well until around about the end of first year, when there was a particular laboratory class in cell biology. And in this case, we had to dissect rats, but the rats were still alive until just prior to the start of the class. The fact that these rats were being killed right there and then for our use was much more confronting to me and forced me to seriously think about an issue that I'd been successfully avoiding up until then. And so I told the instructors that I didn't want to participate in this laboratory class and requested alternatives. My request was denied, and I ended up boycotting the class as a result, which cost me a grade in that subject. However, this caused enormous controversy. Everybody was talking about it. Some people supported me, other people opposed me. The result of all this controversy was that the university dropped this experiment from the curriculum the following year, saving around about 40 rats each year. I didn't reconsider my choice of career. What it did motivate me to do was go and learn an awful lot about animal use in life and health sciences education and about the sorts of alternatives that are available. Animals have traditionally been used in preclinical subjects such as anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, even pharmacology and parasitology, in order to demonstrate well-established scientific principles. And they've been used in clinical and surgical disciplines in which veterinary surgical students in particular practice surgical procedures on healthy animals and unfortunately in many countries then kill them at the end of the procedure. Fortunately, many alternatives now exist for this sort of animal use. High-quality videos of professionally performed dissections or animal experiments enable students to benefit from seeing those performed year after year without the procedures needing to be redone every year. It's possible to juxtapose images of microscopic tissue specimens against the macroscopic organs from which they're sourced. Dissections can be performed by professionals to a very high standard, meaning that the body parts are readily visible to students. Simulations will often provide additional information about body parts. With respect to muscles, for example, they will often provide information such as the anatomical origin and insertion of the muscle, the nerve supply to the muscle, and the type of function that the muscle will perform. And some of these simulations allow a student to click on the muscle and cause the muscle to actually contract, moving a certain body part, such as causing an eyelid to close or a nose to twitch. And this is an example of something that you can't do with a chunk of meat in a classical dissection. Other simulations include things like radiographic views of anatomy. They provide additional information about clinically important structures such as veins and arteries. They can provide coloured diagrams, functional diagrams, demonstrating things like the circulation of blood through different chambers of the heart. And they can provide information about things like the natural history or ecology of the species concerned, including things like audio and video clips of the animals in their natural environments. It's also possible to use real animals when these are ethically sourced, and now we're talking about ethically sourced cadavers. These are animals that have died naturally or in accidents or been euthanized for medical reasons and donated for teaching purposes. Body parts can be preserved in pots containing formaldehyde or other chemical preservatives which are designed to prevent bacterial putrefaction and also permanently preserve the tissues and retain characteristics such as their colour. Plastination involves several chemical steps and the use of a vacuum to remove the fats from organs and permanently preserve them, giving them a plasticky feel. It's also possible to perfuse the blood vessels of organs and the airways with epoxy resins and coloured dyes, and then to dissolve away the surrounding soft tissues with mild acid solutions over prolonged time periods, leaving coloured casts of the airways and the blood vessels. Clinical training mannequins exist for dogs, cats, horses and other species, and they allow students to practice things like mouth-to-snout resuscitation, feeling for a pulse, listening for normal and pathological breath sounds and heart sounds. There are even simulators that create a kind of virtual reality. For example, students might need to insert their fingertips inside various parts of an animal in order to try to feel, such as during pregnancy diagnosis, for example. Haptic technology enables a student to put their fingertips into a thimble connected to a robotic arm connected to a computer simulation, and this applies pressure to the student's fingertips, which would be anatomically correct if there was a real animal there, giving the student the experience of being inside a real animal. Humane veterinary surgical training ideally employs 3 stages. In the first stage, students practice their basic manual skills and instrument handling skills using things like knot tying boards, synthetic organs and similar models. In the second stage, students practice the full surgical procedure on an ethically sourced cadaver. And in the third stage, students get involved in beneficial surgery on real animal patients. They start by observing the surgery and then assisting with the surgery and then performing the surgery under close individual supervision. There have been quite a number of studies published comparing the learning outcomes achieved by humane alternatives compared to traditional harmful animal use. There have been at least 11 studies of veterinary surgical students. 45% of these have indicated that students using humane alternatives learn surgical skills better or achieve the same results more quickly. Another 45% have indicated that there's no significant difference between the 2 methods. The sorts of skills that were assessed in these studies included things like psychomotor and instrument handling skills, tying off blood vessels, conducting surgeries of organs like the stomach, the intestines, and also the spay operation, the female ovarian hysterectomy. A number of non-surgical disciplines were examined in these studies as well, assessing the effectiveness of humane alternatives in teaching concepts in cardiovascular physiology, microbiology, and various other disciplines. And once again, the alternatives were usually found to be at least as effective as traditional harmful animal use. Many additional studies have considered non-veterinary students, looking at all levels down to high school biology and all disciplines in the life and health sciences at university level in which animals are used. There have been more than 30 of these studies published now in the educational literature, and the results are similar. Around 39% of all these studies show that superior learning outcomes are achieved using the humane alternatives. About 51% of all studies show that equivalent learning outcomes are achieved, and in only 9% of studies are inferior learning outcomes achieved by the humane method. Another important advantage is, of course, ethical. Estimates indicate that around about 6 million vertebrates are used annually in just the United States for high school biology teaching. The numbers of bullfrogs, for example, used in dissections is so large that frog sourcing for dissection purposes is considered to be contributing to pressures on frog populations internationally. There have been a number of cases in which students have been unsuccessful in asking for humane teaching methods at their universities and been required to go to the media and take legal action against their universities. In 1995, medical student Safia Rubai was failed in physiology at the University of Colorado for refusing to participate in a live dog lab. She subsequently took physiology at another medical school that did allow alternatives, and she passed physiology, graduated with her medical degree, and sued the University of Colorado for $95,000 in costs. The university was also required to implement alternatives in the future for students that requested them. The fact that I was able to go through my veterinary surgical education without harming any animals in the process and go on to be a very successful veterinarian in practice for many years before entering academia, I think quite clearly demonstrates that it's no longer necessary to harm animals in education if it ever was.